Welcome everybody. I'm Mark Fox, CEO of NetEvents, and delighted to welcome you to our session on 5G, IoT, and the Network Edge. I'm delighted to introduce you to Jerry Caron, who is the Global Head of Research and Analysis at Global Data. Jerry, over to you to chair the session and introduce our panelists today.
Thank you, Mark, and hello, everybody. Yeah, it'll be my pleasure to guide the conversation today on really edge computing, but of course, close proximity to it is IoT and the opportunity there, and then the underlying technological enabler, 5G, particularly as it pertains to enterprise applications. That's the topic of the conversation today. Joining me in a minute will be Anit Lohtia from Dell, Dr. Srinivas Bhattiprolu with Nokia, Chris Purdy with Spirent, Lakshmi Mandyam from VMware, and David Joosten from Vodafone Business will be the main participants in the discussion in a few minutes' time. Certainly a tremendous group of experts to discuss this particular topic, given their range of responsibilities and also the companies that they represent. So let's get started. I first want to make a few comments about our research and our insights into what's going on in the marketplace. And again, they're all quite interrelated. If you think about private 5G or 5G, enterprise 5G, and its relationship in terms of unlocking the potential of IoT and then related edge-enabled applications. You often speak to them in the same language, particularly when you're referencing vertical industry applications. I'll get started with a discussion about where we are with 5G technology at the moment. It's an important time for 5G technology, so let's take a couple minutes just to take stock of where we are. We just came out with our some growth projections to 2027 for 5G itself. And this is general. This is consumer as well as enterprise. And we project to see very healthy growth for mobile 5G services revenue worldwide. This growth has been slow. I think everyone is aware of the struggles operators who have deployed non-standalone 5G, that the troubles they've had in monetizing that investment over revenue they were already getting with 4G LTE in terms of the sort of general mobile broadband use cases. However, we are seeing an uptick in the adoption of 5G, both on the consumer side, but also on the enterprise side too. We expect that to continue to grow over the next few years. What's interesting when you look at the 5G service revenue share of total mobile revenue, though, it tells an interesting story. By the end of 2027, you're going to see upwards of 80+% in North America and the Asia Pacific region of total mobile revenue will be 5G related. But then when you look at areas like Africa, Middle East, and Latin America, much less so, in the 30% range for both of those major regions. And that speaks to the complexity of 5G and the rollouts related to it. There are issues with spectrum. There are issues with spectrum licensing, so forth and so on. But there's also the very important issue of the need to completely rethink and re-architect the service network. And that's actually a good thing, because these networks needed to be re-architected and make better use of automation techniques and to increase operational efficiency as well as capabilities. So we foresee a bit of a gap between part of the world being able to invest and make those network changes and other parts of the world not so quickly. So that's a challenge for the industry to help with that. terms of next generation capabilities, a number of you would have heard about a move to standalone 5G. And that is ongoing. About 25% of the operators worldwide have standalone 5G rollouts in play, and that is accelerating. Basically, these are 5G networks with a true 5G core, as opposed to a 5G RAN overlaid, or radio access network overlaid on top of a 4G existing 4G infrastructure. This will unlock a number of capabilities that we have been talking about in relation to 5G for actually many years now, in terms of latency and in terms of raw performance, in terms of efficiency, so forth and so on, in terms of capacity. And so that's an important event going on in the technology. In addition, next year, the 3GPP standards body will finish up with something called 5G Advanced. And again, it's about better coverage, better capacity, better spectrum usage, so forth and so on. And that will be rolling out as well. So important milestones as 5G evolves. Talking about very low latency, capability for operators to offer better consistency in terms of bandwidth guarantees, application priorities, all of which, by the way, and slicing, network slicing capability is to slice those service offerings, offering prioritization, et cetera. If you think about those core capabilities I just rattled off very quickly, absolutely essential for supporting enterprise applications, IoT at a massive scale, and edge computing. Quick look at the timeline. I don't want to flash this. This is the 3GPP standards timeline. I just wanted to flash this because of the 6G reference. I think in the press and other areas you would have heard some mention already of 6G and what's going on there. The reality is it's a progression, it's an evolution from where we are now to 5G Advanced to eventually 6G. But the 3GPP won't even start talking about standardizing what we call today 6G until 2027 timeframe, end of 2027. So we're really talking fairly far out, but it's important to note that it's already being worked on, and there's already a lot of thinking about, again, really upping the coverage, upping the capacity, and the key word with 6G is ubiquity, capability everywhere, which really isn't the case now and won't be for some time. Quick note on private 5G, another buzzword in the industry. It is true in our studies and our research on deployments that when you talk about enterprise 5G, you are talking about private 5G. That will change. There are a lot of service rollouts, particularly with standalone networks, that will alter that scenario. But right now, you are talking about companies deploying 5G in a private way because they can get the advantage of the latency and all that, and they need it. And on the right-hand side of this, you see the industries that really do value that at the moment versus those that do not. Again, this will change going forward, but that's where we are now. A quick note on our thoughts on edge and IoT before I hand it over to the panel. In terms of IoT, the thing I want to point out here is that there's a chart here with our forecast, going out. What's interesting is that IoT market is growing. It became, it was unfancy, quite it lost its luster over the past couple of years for a pretty good reason, because it was a slow build in terms of a revenue generator for the suppliers in the marketplace. But it is moving pretty quickly. We track IoT deployments, have done since 2014, and we can see what's happening, and the numbers are going up. But what's interesting is the scale of the deployments is much bigger now than it used to be. It used to be quite small deployments or even proofs of concept. Now we're seeing more full-blown deployments of IoT in various industries. And so it will grow, and it'll get up toward 900 billion toward 2027, which interesting is touching that trillion mark, which you might have heard some reports a long time ago saying that IoT would be $1 trillion business by 2020. Well, that didn't happen, but it is progressing and it is important. And of course, the enabling technology I just discussed will help with that. In terms of edge computing, Here again, here's our forecast here, just came out, and again growing very rapidly, very quickly, strong. There's some important issues I'll discuss in a second about why it isn't growing even faster, and we might be looking at revising this pretty quickly, depending on how quickly the ecosystem can get together in a way to make these edge computing opportunities comprehensive, so that the customers and the enterprise can comprehend what it's going to cost, how it's going to help them, so forth and so on. There's still a lot of work to do in this area, but again, quickly and again by nearly 800 million in the 2026 timeframe. Number of use cases. I'm not going to touch on this. We're lacking time here, but the important point here is that in our study, in our surveys of various enterprises across 22 different vertical industries, there are really good, compelling edge computing use cases in every single one of them. And we're already seeing deployments. We're already seeing successes. And these will set marks for others in those industries to follow as they go along. But everything from retail to manufacturing to even the entertainment industry, there's really solid edge computing opportunities and use cases where getting compute close to the action can make a big difference and can really bring applications to life. Finally, my last comment, and really this is about the ecosystem issue I mentioned. Edge computing, if you take a step back and look at it as a whole, is quite a complex ecosystem. You have IT vendors, you have IT service providers, you have the cloud providers of all stripes, not just the hyperscalers. You have the network or the network providers, and actually the application providers themselves, all together sort of going after this edge computing opportunity. It's an integration exercise, but it needs to be an integrated go-to-market exercise in order to bring coherent solutions to businesses on a scale bigger than what it currently is. And it's something interesting to watch as we go forward. Okay, end of my comments. Let's move to the discussion. What I'm going to ask you to do is each panelist to introduce themselves, actually. Me, Jerry Caron, Head of Research Analysis at the Technology Group at Global Data. And let's start with Anit. Would you mind introducing yourself, please?
Thanks, Jerry. This is Anit Lohtia. I'm with Dell Technology. I head the 5G strategy and private mobility program in our telco business unit. I come from long background in 3GPP technologies, going back to the first generation and early days of wireless data. And I've been part of the machine-to-machine or IoT in wireless for the last 10 years. So I'm excited to have this discussion to see how the industry is progressing and hear the thoughts from other panelists as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Anit. Srinivas.
Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. I'm Srinivas. You can address me as Srini. I'm responsible for the global cloud and network services business, and I head the pre-sales for cloud and network services in Nokia. I have close to 23 years of experience in information technology, telecommunications, product system integration, and security, including IoT, 5G, and other edge computing technologies and applications. I'm really excited to be in this panel and learn from my co-panelists, as well as some of you who are going to be asking intelligent questions. Thank you very much.
Great, thanks. And Chris?
Hi, everyone. I'm Chris Purdy. So for those of you who don't know Spirent Communications, we're a world leader in 5G testing and assurance solutions. So almost every company that operates a 5G network is using our testing solutions to validate their 5G technology and implementations. And as a result, we have a very hands-on view of both what's in service now and what's coming up on a worldwide basis. And my role within Spirent is that of principal strategist in the area of cloud and service assurance, focused on understanding and kind of what's going on in the market and helping to direct our portfolio to meet that demand. In addition to my role at Spirent, I'm also co-chair of the Digital Services Committee at the MEF Forum. That's a standards body primarily led by service providers that defines services they'll sell, as well as APIs to buy and sell those services. So that would include edge cloud services, network slicing services, security services, and connectivity services. And so prior to this, I spent my 3 years at Spirent. I was CTO at 2 startups, one that was sold to Nokia, and I spent 9 years at Scenics, was sold to Ericsson in 2018. And I'm very excited to participate in this and get hear the different perspectives.
Great, thanks, Chris. Lakshmi?
Thanks, Jerry. I'm Lakshmi Mandyam, and I head up product management and partner ecosystems for VMware's service provider and Edge BU. I've been in the industry for about 25 plus years, played a variety of roles in the infrastructure data center kind of ecosystem, from hardware to software and vertical markets. VMware is actually a leading software provider that's very well known for its IT infrastructure, but actually we are deployed in over 150 service providers running their platforms for core and now starting to get into RAN and of course Edge as well.
Great, thanks. And finally, David.
Thank you, Jerry. Hi, everybody. So my name is David Joosten. I run Vodafone's commercial and business operations in North America, but also responsible for our business operations in France and the Nordics. I've been in the industry, I guess, a little bit over 25 years, mostly working for telecom operators. And in the last 16, 17 years, I've been working for Vodafone in multiple roles in Europe. And the last 3 years, I've been running as I said, the US business. Been through all the 2G, 3G, 4G, 5G, and all the Gs that are coming, all the generations of mobile technology. And I'm still very excited to the new potential that it brings businesses and the impact that it has on the world. So looking forward to having this discussion with you guys.
Great, thank you. Okay, let's get started. We're basically going to break up the next segment into 3 discrete discussion areas. The first one's going to look at the technology. A second, we'll look at demand, enterprise demand for the solutions that we've been discussing. And finally, we'll wrap up with future steps, what to look forward to in terms of developments going forward. So in terms of the technology status check, where are we? It's key, the technology development and enabling these edge and IoT applications. So Srinivas, if we don't mind, I'd like to start with you with any thoughts you might have on where the industry is in terms of readiness to support these applications.
Sure. Thank you very much, Jerry. So let's start with these standards, because that'll basically be a segue from what you were talking about, right? So really, if you really look at the type of use cases that are going to be prevalent in the 5G, there are 3 specific and distinct type of use cases. The first one is the enhanced mobile broadband use cases. The second one is URLLC, or ultra reliable low latency communication. The third one is the massive machine type communication use cases. Release 16, till release 16, we only had visibility in terms of the EMBB use cases. Release 17 is supposed to provide us with some level of a sneak peek into ultra reliable low latency communication. And MMTC is going to come beyond 17 and possibly into 18 and further. So as of now, we only have great visibility into EMBB use cases. So that's where the technology needs to evolve. And the second one, which is one of the most important aspects, is the readiness of the device ecosystem. Now, we all know the impact that had in terms of getting the devices ready. So as of now, we're still lagging in terms of the readiness of the device ecosystem. Not all use cases that require different types of devices are going to be ready or are ready at this point of time. Even though there are some devices that are ready, it's still not economical for mass production for these devices. So that's the second challenge we have. And Jerry, you also talked about the standalone architecture, which is very, very important. The real value of 5G, the incremental ARPU for CSPs would only ensue through enterprise or B2B use cases. The real B2C use cases based on our research would probably give anywhere between 0 to 3% ARPU incremental increase. In some countries, it's probably, some countries like Finland, it's probably around 4 to 5%. But the real fillip to the ARPU will only come from the enterprises use case, which is to the tune of 15 to 18%. Now, obviously, that's what the analysts are saying, that's what GSMA is saying, but nobody has really seen the level of ARPU shift that we're talking about at this point of time. For CSPs to really launch enterprise use cases, standalone technology, which is based on service-based architecture, is very important. And the slicing is another concept which is really going to determine the success of these enterprise use cases. So far, we've only got CSPs in only 25% or probably 30% of the CSPs that have gone live on standalone technology, which is a prerequisite for them to really offer slicing. So that's something which needs to be ready as well. So as CSPs get into launching SA core, I think the technology will evolve. Last but not the least, the wave 2 of investments around security, modernizing the operations, really looking for new ways of monetizing 5G, because the traditional way of monetizing the telecom services was based on value and volume. But then you've got a lot more attributes today. You could potentially think of 120 plus attributes like latency, like security, like quality of service. Many of these attributes need to be monetized. So are the systems that are currently prevalent within the CSP ecosystem ready to monetize or charge based on these different parameters? So that's something this needs to evolve as well. So in my view, to summarize, I think excuse me, it's still at a very early stage. There is a lot of progress that's happening. Yes, the last 2 years have certainly hampered the progress, but I believe the train has left the station. There is going to be a lot more emphasis by the CSPs on jumping onto the bandwagon and making sure that you have the right technology in place before they can start offering the right level of use cases.
Yeah, well, all well put. Thanks, Srinivas. I wonder, thanks for kicking it off, this discussion too, by the way, also. David, as representative of an operator who's working with enterprises on the deployment of enterprise 5G and the related IoT and edge computing applications, I wonder if you have something to add in terms of your perspective on readiness of the technology and what and what you're seeing in the marketplace at the moment.
Well, I think the technology is ready. I think one of the things that Srini rightfully said is there are some enhancements that some operators are waiting for, like the slicing, which will really, I would say, catapult the applications and of the technology. We are seeing quite some developments already. I think one sector where there's most, I would say, activity, or at least that we are seeing, is specifically manufacturing, and a lot of it in automotive. So we have use cases across BMW. In Leipzig, we have a plant within the UK with Ford. But then also, if you look at healthcare, so we implemented the first 5G hospital in Düsseldorf. So as these applications continue to grow, I think more of that will pick up, and then we'll see more development and adoption in the sector. But again, it is still early days. I think a lot of business leaders still need to figure out what this new technology is going to give, or what applications they can use. I think you at least need to use a lot of creativity to think on what can you really do with this. And then you will come up with some, I think, some really impressive use cases. So for now, as I said, a lot of it that we see is in mobile private networks. Lots of development on that one. I think in other areas, I think there is still some work to be done. And us as a sector also to advocate, I would say, our customers and people on the benefits of that technology.
Super great. Yeah, I mean, we're definitely seeing, talking, you mentioned healthcare. We talked to a big healthcare provider about their views, and they're very, very interested in rolling out enterprise 5G generally, but also edge computing applications. But they're trying to figure out how to get started. So, and I think there's a lot of that going on in the industry, and certainly the more examples out there we have, the easier it will be for companies to see what's possible today and also going forward. So Lakshmi, just from VMware perspective, slightly different perspective, I suppose. What are your thoughts on what's happening?
Yeah, it's really interesting. Srinivas and David talked about from an operator and a pure technology of 5G perspective, what we're seeing from the actual user perspective, and by user I mean lines of business within a company, whether it be the manufacturing operations of a large automotive retail or automotive manufacturer, as an example, where they're looking at a couple of different angles in terms of how do they operationalize this. So take something that historically, when you looked at OT, it was very disparate. There were many different isolated systems, siloed systems for various manufacturing operations. And what they've been looking for is a platform that actually scales and allows them to drive efficiencies and operational capabilities with automation, with things like zero-touch provisioning, where they can actually remotely deploy and upgrade hardware, lifecycle manage their hardware and their software applications, and also leverage a lot of the IT expertise that they've had in terms of workflows and automation, and being able to execute on a platform that actually scales, whether I'm trying to consolidate, let's say, a manufacturing line and consolidate all of these siloed and legacy applications onto a platform at a line level, at a factory level, at a central aggregation point. So they're looking for that consistency of operation management. And if you think about challenges at the edge, there's a lot of issues around needing to be able to support real-time capabilities, physical security with zero trust environments, remote and centralized managements of all these different, whether it be a simple IoT node or a large robotic arm or whatever the scale of the device that you're trying to manage, and the scale of devices that you're trying to manage, going from tens to hundreds of thousands of devices. So they're looking for a platform that can enable them to scale, enables applications, enables both legacy kind of virtualized applications, because the transition that we see is, if there's a siloed application, it typically gets virtualized and then it gets modernized into a containerized function. And so, we're seeing that transition happen. So they're looking for a platform that allows them that resiliency, that scalability. And we've actually got customers like Audi, for example, that are looking to consolidate their compute in the factory onto a single platform where they might have had disparate platforms before, both from an efficiency perspective, manageability perspective, and an overall simplification, really, of their operations. So those are kind of the perspectives that we're seeing from the actual users that are trying to manage and operate these factories.
Super. Thanks very much. Before we move on to the next topic, let's have a comment from Anit. The Dell being interesting company sort of sitting in the space between enabling edge computing infrastructure and the network. So what are your thoughts, Anit, on the tech landscape?
Thanks, Jerry. The way I like to think of 5G is not like one single technology. I see this as a multiple technologies or pieces of technologies coming together. And rather than thinking about 5G as a one big bang or waiting for all the capabilities, what we are seeing in the industry is, especially in IoT space, where people are looking more from the business, solving a business problem or business outcome. And for that, none of the use cases need all the capabilities. Like some use cases would require low latency, some use cases would require higher bandwidth. And what we are seeing is people are starting to look how they can solve their different business problems. And some of them even require very minimal bandwidth. For example, the oil rigs, you need to monitor, you're just monitoring whether a pump is on or not, or is a flow rate meeting the specification or not. Those are like almost binary data transmission, but they add a lot of value in terms of solving the business problem. So rather than waiting for all the capabilities, people are making use of what's available now. So, and these would, they continue to build on those use cases. So I don't want anybody to walk in with the impression like technology is not ready. It's more about what use cases can be solved based on what's available today. And a lot of technology or pieces of technologies are available to solve the business problems today.
Yeah, great point. Definitely don't want to leave people the impression that technology isn't ready, because there are deployments, they're happening, it is happening, and it depends on the use case. Yes, some of the more advanced things requiring super low latency at that, there's a bit of time for that, but that's not where everybody is at the moment. That's a very good point. Okay, let's move on to the next topic, which is related. All these topics are sort of related, so but it has to do with demand. So as I noted on IoT, we're seeing a real spike in interest in wider scale deployments of Internet of Things applications, and we're seeing definite increase in private 5G and an increase in edge, although a bit slower than we had originally anticipated. That said, what's your perspective on demand out there, and what are some of the game changers in terms of mindset that you've noticed with the customer base? And perhaps on this one, let's start with David, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. Well, I think you mentioned the two first topics, which where demand is pretty high. So at the moment, we have around 160 million IoT connections worldwide. I think roughly over like 400 or 500 operators, 190 countries, and that grows double digit every year. And I think in a lot of instances, we think, is this growth fast enough? Although I do see, and compared to the industry, I think we are growing quite fast. I do think growth is accelerating over the last 2 years. I do see in certain industries that would have, let's say, 50-60% of IoT rolled out are really now accelerating to finish up with the remaining, and us really starting to add additional applications and additional technologies on top of that, starting to add AI, VR, AR on top of that, and really starting to you first start with connecting things, and then you start building out the intelligence and add the additional applications. I think that's at the point when you start adding AR and VR and really artificial intelligence to IoT, that's when the technology becomes massively powerful. So I think absolutely back up the findings that you showed in the beginning. So IoT is absolutely continuing to accelerate. Then the second one, mobile private networks, private 5G has been very popular, I would say, over the last 2 years. We've seen it in isolated deployments over the last, let's say, again, 1.5, 2 years. And now we're seeing actually the people or the companies that adopting it, wanting to roll it out across many more countries, many more different environments, and really starting to combine, for example, the power what they had from their IoT deployments or sensoring, or even 4G for mobile phone usage and all that into one environment. So really starting to look at connectivity as a core component to their strategy, and not, like I said, not just in one country, but across a multitude or even their complete footprint, which gives a different kind of challenge as well, because the technology is not available everywhere. So you have to start looking at different kinds of ways to source frequency, different kinds of plans. So it becomes a very interesting, I would say, question mark for a lot of the players that are represented here today, not just the network operator, but also the Lakshmi's thought on and ideas from a user perspective become very interesting as a topic with customers.
Yeah, great points. Thanks. Srinivas, anything to add here?
So I would like to take this from two perspectives. One, which David very aptly put, from a service provider's perspective, you have to really look at the vertical use cases. And again, as David rightly mentioned, I think each sector has a different need in terms of use cases. And from our experience, we believe that public safety is one of the major spenders in this area, followed by the manufacturing industry 4.0 is certainly driving this, utilities, and even for that matter, logistics. So that's something which is really driving the uptake of use cases in the 5G spectrum. But what is also very important is from solution provider perspective. Now, we all believe, and we've actually seen this in operation as well, that if CSPs are simply becoming connectivity providers, again, there won't be much of a growth in their business. I think they'll have to eventually become application providers, and that's where the real value comes, and that's where the real incremental ARPU comes to the CSPs. From a perspective of solution providers, the likes of Nokia, we see that the initial waves of investment around 5G new radio have already happened. You talked about the core investments, and I think they're happening. Now, CSPs are looking at investing more on modernizing their operations infrastructure. They're also modernizing their applications. Lakshmi talked about moving the monolithic physical network functions to the VNFs, which is virtual network functions, which has already happened. Now, operators are moving towards re-architecting the applications and making them more containerized, or making them more cloud-native network functions or containerized network functions. That's where we see there is demand for solutions. There is also demand for 5G security solutions, which is all around securing the 5G, and also in the wake of new regulatory requirements that are coming to the fore and country-specific requirements. CSPs are becoming a lot more sensitive in terms of making sure that their 5G is secure and their critical infrastructure is secure. So that's where I see the two dimensions of the demand for the solutions, both from a CSP perspective as well as a solution provider perspective.
Excellent. Yeah.
Jerry,
Go ahead, Lakshmi. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I was going to say, a couple of interesting things that we're also seeing. I think we can all understand that energy efficiency and carbon footprint has become supremely important, and in fact, energy supply itself under threat. Especially, it's top of mind issue for folks in Europe, as far as we are aware. And when you look at a lot of these companies, they're looking at how do they, again, simplify their operations, but actually spend less energy on their operations. And a couple of examples, I mentioned like Audi as an example, where they had hundreds of industrial PCs spread out everywhere. And they're looking to consolidate that with virtualized functions, containerized functions, onto a centralized management platform, but not sacrificing the scalability, not sacrificing the real-time capabilities that they require. What we've seen is that this kind of consolidation and automation at the edge requires some very specific capabilities that take advantage of real-time hardware consumption, real-time hardware capabilities. We have another example, and I think about another big global issue facing the world, which is food waste. And we actually have a company, a food processing company called JBS Foods that we're working with, that is using computer vision to actually reduce waste and improve worker skill. And this is where, using traditionally, when you had very hardware optimized solutions, they had to be kind of monolithic, very purpose-built solutions. And we've actually worked with them using some GPU, sharing GPU and CPU resources, and deploying, a computer vision app running locally in the factory and as a containerized function, and providing this manufacturer the ability to, move resources, move workloads. And what this means is that the flexibility that these kinds of solutions can provide actually makes the implementation of edge applications simpler. And this is kind of going to cause a virtuous cycle for, what you talked about in terms of growth of IoT, growth of edge. All of this requires technology platforms that give these folks the simplicity, the applications, the operational capabilities, and we're starting to see that technology come together now. And so to David's point earlier about people finding creativity, I think when you have the tools and the platforms, it allows you to develop that creativity. And for me personally, it's kind of exciting to see that problems like food waste and energy consumption can be solved and tackled for all of us globally using some of these edge capabilities and making some of those challenges go away through digitalization. And I think that's really exciting for all of us that are in this industry.
Yeah, great. And thank you, by the way, for bringing up the point about energy and general ESG play here. It comes out quite a lot in our discussion with businesses and in various industries as something that they look at when they're evaluating any new technology or any new application architecture or mode is what's the impact? How will this help us achieve our goals? So extremely important. Also, another thing, just a general macro issue that I'm curious about. Don't know. We're going to try to study it, and our new forecasts are out at the end of this month. But economic downturn in a number of different areas of the world right now. Will businesses see investments in next generation technologies like IoT and edge as something that they can cut back on, or will it be something that they see will actually help them operate more efficiently and therefore benefit them? So I don't know if anyone wants to comment on that last point before we move on, but it is something we're watching closely.
I think coupled with what you talked about, I think they see, at least in our conversations, automation and scale being essential to solve not only their cost and OpEx challenges, there's actually a resource shortage of skilled resources. A lot of populations that were in manufacturing are aging out. It's really hard to find skilled people, and this is where automation becomes a really important aspect in terms of just running your business. And that's what we're hearing from our conversations.
Yeah, I'm certainly not seeing any reduction in demand at this point, Carrie. At the MEF, we began a project about 6 months ago to define edge compute services, and it has attracted substantial interest from the service provider community, just because they're getting so much discussions with their enterprise customers that are looking for these kinds of solutions, because everybody kind of sees the potential. But I think we're quite early because of the complexity associated with rolling them out. You often have to, you're not just rolling out an IoT application, you've got to roll out the edge compute, you've got to roll out the 5G core and bundle it all together and make it work together. So, as an example, if you take an augmented reality application in an American football stadium where you want to be able to have the people that are at the stadium also get that real-time playbacks, player highlights, close-ups for ref calls, etc., on their tablet or phone. And to deliver the solution, yeah, they need that application that works on there. They need the compute on site at the stadium so that it performs adequately. And they need extremely fast, low latency 5G. So we're talking about millimeter wave kind of deployments to get that much capacity in the stadium. And so when you're trying to roll out all three of those and bundle them together and make the solution work, that's where a lot of the challenges lie. So I think there's tremendous demand, and I don't think that we're gonna the financial situation worldwide is going to slow that down considerably, but just because of the fact that the opportunity is so big. What's slowing it down right now is more the complexity of implementing those bundled solutions.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Great points. Thank you for pointing that out and the clarifications. I think what we want to do now is move to the final phase of the discussion before we move to the Q&A. in a few minutes, and that is future step. What does the industry need to be doing to accelerate interest in and adoption of these technologies? And I think, Chris, it'll be a segue because you had put your hand up to lead this one, so we're going to stick with you to kick us off here. Yeah.
Yeah, so when we were, as everyone said, we're in the early stage of 5G rollout, and despite 1 billion subscribers on it now and 1,000 different device types, we really are on the early stages because we've really just kind of done this coverage to allow large deployment, and we're starting to see some the enterprise applications that are ultimately the direction. But when 4G was at this stage of maturity, while we were all making mobile phone calls and sending text messages, that everyone thought the killer app was going to be pictures everywhere. And really what it turned out was that it was high bandwidth and data everywhere. And that 4G infrastructure enabled a ton of applications from ESPN to Instagram and YouTube and horrible things like TikTok and 7x24 News that weren't possible on 3G networks. And all of these applications run on largely centralized compute facilities that were developed specifically to host these applications. And it's those applications that drove monetization of the whole stack. So if we use that same model to predict what will happen in 5G, we'd be asking ourselves 3 questions. Like, 1, what are the killer applications that 5G will enable? 2, what changes will these applications drive to the compute infrastructure? And then 3, how are these applications enabled by that 5G infrastructure and what will it do there? So if I look at the killer applications questions, the killer applications for 5G aren't the applications we know and love today. They're ones that won't work on a 4G network. And with 4G versus 3G, the difference was with bandwidth, but I believe strongly that with 5G, it's going to be latency. 5G bandwidth will be better, but if it's going to be spottier because of millimeter wave deployments, it's a lot harder to get those kinds of high bandwidth because they don't have the same distance, they don't have the same ability to penetrate facilities. So, but there are a ton of applications, from augmented reality to interactive real-time gaming to factory or aeronautic control systems that simply won't work on a 4G network because of the latency issues. So, if you take augmented reality, if you take a video feed, you send it over a 4G network with 50 milliseconds latency to some centralized data center, augment it and send it back, the delay will make the application useless. The user moves their head to augment, and by the time the video comes back, they've registered the movement, and there's this perceptible delay in the presentation of the video. It'll cause you to at least reject this virtual world, the legitimacy of it, and in some cases, it can actually make you physically sick. So similarly, long delays or unreliable connectivity in factory or transportation control systems will often render them useless, if not dangerous. So I believe 5 years from now, when we're looking back, it'll be these delay-sensitive real-time applications that we'll look back on and answer the question of why we did this whole 5G thing. Now, that brings us to the second question of what will these applications drive in compute infrastructure? I personally hate the term edge compute because it leads everyone to ask the question, where is the edge? And it's kind of a silly, unanswerable question we probably spent hours at trying to answer. A much better name would really be that it's just much more distributed compute. Whereas today's applications are running on our handheld and IoT devices with servers in remote, highly centralized data centers, these new applications demand a much more distributed set of compute resources. The software workloads that need to be processed in real time are run in compute centers that are as close as possible to the user, whereas workloads that can be run in lower cost, more centralized servers will run there. And finally, the third thing that we get to is the question of the 5G infrastructure. And the features that are defined in 3GPP release 16, 17, and beyond are the ones that are going to enable these new applications. And so, we're going to see release 16 starting to roll out and we're coming to reality in the marketplace in 2023. Release 17 is probably mid 2024. But there's one thing that's essential, which is and I think we've talked about a lot of these things, but one of the things that's essential to make this work in the 5G infrastructure is instrumentation and analytics. to allow us to measure delay in the 5G infrastructure. Today, the only real way to measure that delay is through drive tests. And even these don't help us sectionalize where the problem is. Is it over the air? Is it on the front haul, the back haul, in the edge server? And so if we can't measure and sectionalize it, we won't be able to deliver it or charge a premium for it. So I think there's going to be significant effort in this place. So to summarize, I think what we're going to see over the next 5 years is a dance where these real-time interactive applications start appearing, mostly for enterprise first. They'll drive the need for a more distributed compute infrastructure and features like slicing and instrumentation in the 5G infrastructure. And when that infrastructure improves, these applications improve, and we then have this feedback cycle where we start building these more advanced applications. So, and I believe strongly that when we look back on this 5 years from now, we're going to see 5G as every bit as world changing as 4G was.
Yeah, thanks for that. And your point about latency being critical. The combination of the network advancements we've been discussing and edge or distributed computing, if you prefer, combined are what delivers the latency advantages. And concepts like the business grade augmented reality or virtual reality, or the metaverse, if you'd like to use that term, you can't even think of those without these advancements that are taking place. So
Exactly.
great points. Anit, comments from you in this area. What's next and what needs to happen?
Sure. No, thanks, Jerry. I'll take a slightly different approach to the problem, or a different aspect of the problem. Like if you look at the cellular industry in the last 20 years, there used to be 3 C's for cellular industry: coverage, capacity, and cost. What I would say, like what we need to address is the 4th C is the complexity. When you look at even on today's topic, you have 5G, you have IoT, you have network edge. Each of these technologies are fairly complex. Lakshmi touched on the containerization, orchestration of containers and application. There's an infrastructure. 5G comes with you have a RAN, which has its own complexity of the spectrum, frequency management, capacity. Then you have your packet core or 5G core, which has become now a distributed core. There's different aspects of the core, whether it's the HSS, the subscriber management, network slicing. It becomes more and more complex. And then on top of that, there are OT technologies and how you run your factory, you have your processes. There are not that many companies which have ability to have skill set to address all these different aspects of the technology. So that has been, in my opinion, one of the key barriers for IoT to live up to the market forecast we have seen over the 10 years. We consistently underperform as an industry and not meeting the market forecast. And I firmly believe one of the reasons is the complexity involved in delivering these solutions. As an industry, we need to find a way where we can abstract underlying technologies complexity. So the operational managers who does not have in-depth expertise in 5G technology or 3GPP technology, they don't need to understand the nuts and bolts of IT technology, but are able to actually solve their business problem. If we are able to get to that point, at that point, the wide, massive deployment of these solutions would be possible. And I think as an industry, like companies like Dell, we are stepping up. We have different focus on different verticals where we solve the problems for different verticals. Companies like Nokia, VMware, and so on would have to step up and take that leadership in abstracting the complexity, so the industry, as an industry, we can move forward and start solving more of our customers' problem.
So thank you for that. I think what we should do now, Lakshmi, did you want to add something quick in before on that, or
No,
I'm asking.
I'd just say that I would agree with Amit's perspective in terms of us being able to simplify. And I think everything that we're doing certainly at VMware is aimed at simplifying the deployment and operation at the end user level. In addition to work we're doing at the operator side to simplify their ability to deliver these kinds of services. So, we kind of have this broad perspective, multi-cloud perspective across the actual edge, the operators themselves and the hyperscalers, because we're trying to think about how do we simplify the management and operations of these kinds of applications. So agree with all of the thoughts that have been expressed here.
Great. Okay. Thank you for that. What we'd like to do is to ask each of our panel members to give us a quick closing comment in a minute. And we'll go sort of in reverse order, and like to start with you, put you on the spot, David, but put you first. Any closing comment or thought?
I think maybe to build on the last comment is simplifying things. I think it's the responsibility of everybody here on the call also to simplify offering and make it a bit easier for customers to find the way through the woods in deploying these types of things. So I look at ourselves is how can we simplify the offering? How can we change our normal ways of selling things and putting things in the market a little bit more easy, and how do we cooperate better with the industry, because there's no one player that is going to do everything. So yeah, we work a lot with each of the logos that you see here on the page. So I think as an industry we need to do that more, a lot more for our customers.
Great, thanks. Lakshmi, final comment from you?
I would just like to say that I see and VMware sees that our customers and folks that are looking to deploy and solve some of the challenges that we described earlier around, in manufacturing, in retail, and all of these different areas are looking for platforms that simplify their ability to deploy and manage applications. They're looking for resilience. They're looking for security. And they're looking really for consistency so that as they get into the next set of challenges around scale and deployment, they're able to rapidly actually get to business outcomes. And that's really, I think, what everyone on this panel is focused on. And certainly we are collaborating with everyone on this panel to help make some of that a reality in the industry. And I think it's going to be an exciting time for us, where I think the promise of edge and IoT has been made over the last, 6, 7 years. I think we're actually coming to that tipping point where it's going from the drawing board into actual deployment. And I think it's a result of all of these technologies coming together to enable that kind of transformation.
Yeah, it does feel like we're at the cusp of turning the corner here. Definitely. Thanks for that. Chris, final thought from you, please.
Sure. I mean, I think we've all said it, that it's these new applications that are really going to drive us forward, and and it's the complexity that's holding us back. And I completely agree with that. I think the one thing that I'll add is that if we keep building a unique customized solution with a different 5G infrastructure, private 5G infrastructure, a different edge compute solution, and a different IoT solution for each unique customer, then with all that customization, we're not going to get away. We're not going to make it simpler. The complexity is going to increase. And I think we're going to, as an industry, have to start working on standardizing more of the 5G interface, getting consistency across those that are offering 5G, get a consistency across those that are offering compute solutions instead of, a unique offer by Amazon, Google, Microsoft, VMware, et cetera, and standardizing, IoT platforms so that the different developers of IoT applications don't have to repeat a whole bunch of things. So I think as an industry, we're really going to have to understand those those layers that hide underlying complexity. And we're going to have to find ways to be consistent there, or otherwise the fact we're building a custom solution for each different application will prevent us from achieving the opportunity that we see here.
Yeah, and that's kind of the way the market has been up till now. A great point. Srinivas, final thought?
Yeah, sure. I would kind of use the word general purpose technology for 5G, which will eventually affect everything that humankind does. And I think we've got several examples of that. It's going to really optimize quite a few aspects, whether it is enterprises through automation, through orchestration, and through reducing complexity. It is certainly going to help enterprises as well as communication service providers optimize a lot of processes, take human intervention out. In that way, it will even help them address the headwinds that they are going to be confronted with into next year and beyond. It's also going to help every part of the enterprises and CSPs innovate. There are going to be new use cases that will come to the fore. There will certainly be, as Chris was certainly pointing out, there will be new use cases, new specific ones that will come to the fore, which we don't probably even know at this point of time. The third aspect, which is very, very important, is collaborate. I think this 5G will teach communication service providers and enterprises, including the regulator organizations, to collaborate with each other much better than what they were doing in the past. No CSP can really do this alone. No enterprise can do this alone. Everybody has to come together along with the solution providers to see how best they can really derive value out of 5G. So I think these are the three areas where 5G will certainly help the enterprises as well as the consumers.
Thanks very much. And the final word from you, Anit, over to you.
Thanks, Jerry. The way we look at all these technologies at Dell these are the Lego blocks to solve customer problem. We would like to start at the business outcome. What business outcome are we trying to achieve, or what business problem for our customer we're trying to solve? And based on the needs, the customer needs, we have to pick the right pieces of technology to create a solution. There are technology is one aspect. The other two are equally important. I don't think get enough attention are people and process. Do we have right kind of people with the right skill set to manage the complexity, ability to understand the operational piece of it, the IT piece of it, that telecom piece of, or 5G piece or 3GPP piece of the solution. The other aspect is the process. How many people involved in the project actually understand the business process, how you can improve the, make the process more efficient, and apply the technology properly to achieve the outcome. If we can get all these three ingredients, that's where the recipe for success would be. And Srinivas indicated rightly, like it's about collaboration, not like one company is going to be able to solve all these problems. We have to come together as an ecosystem and make it happen. So the pie is going to be big enough for all the participants to have a really good business outcome for all the participants. So I think that's where we need to focus as an industry going forward. Pieces are falling in place, the momentum is building. It's time to execute. Thanks, Jerry.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And thank you to all the panelists for the tremendous insights. Really, really helpful information.